Are in the book of Esther. We've been kind of plugging our way through it, and each week we have a survival tip as we're dealing with surviving being in a mixed up world, because we live in a mixed up world. We live in a world where there is constant double standards and hypocrisy and crazy things happening, and we scratch our heads and we go, what is wrong with this fallen world? Of course, the answer is in that statement. It's a fallen world. So how do we survive in it? And then later we'll see how to thrive in it. That'll be when we go through the second half of the book of Acts. We already did the first half of Acts, and then we're going through Esther, and then the second half of the book of Acts. So that's kind of our series from now until the end of next year. And so it's not quite that long, but it's a long series. And so some of the tips, I'm just going to fly through these. This is our 11th sermon. They're all on YouTube. So if you hear one of the survival tips and you go, ooh, I want to hear more about that, just see what survival tip number that is, write it down, and just go to that number in the series of our Esther series on YouTube. Isn't that easy? Oh, come on. That's a lot of work. Our video guy just pounds it away on YouTube, making sure it's all available. And the poor guy, he almost has carpal tunnel. Okay, so so it's kind of cool that it works out that way. So survival tip number 1, what is legal is not always moral. Therefore, submit to a triad of authority, starting with the home, above that the government, above that God. Then tip number 2 is that we must be people of confession, repentance, and forgiveness, and being initiators of that process. Tip number 3 is to pursue Jesus, not self-glory like King Xerxes or King Ahasuerus has done, nor comfort like the Jews were doing during that time period. And then tip number 4, to choose purity over compromise. Purity over compromise. Tip 5, life is out of your control, but not out of God's. Very important to kind of remember that little principle. Tip number 6, be people of truth. Seek it, learn it, speak it. You guys chose that one. Thank you very much. And number 7, draw close to Jesus. Let Jesus draw close to you. Tip number 8, to be people of hope and action, and let that action be a result of that hope that is within us. Tip number 9, respecting authority, even when those in authority are not respectable. Always a challenge every day. And then tip number 10, where we left off last time a couple weeks ago, who are you? Know where your identity is rooted. So who are you? That leads us now to today. Tip number 11. And this one is, like a lot of them, they seem simple until you go through the whole material. Then you realize there's a lot more going on, and it's a lot more complicated than we thought, and a lot more, hopefully, convicting and edifying. Tip number 11 is this: to trust in the presence and providence of God before you perceive it. Okay, to trust in the presence and providence of God before you perceive it. So that means you are recognizing and you are trusting in the present, or you're trusting in the present that God is present, God is providing, He is taking care of you, He is in control of everything before you even see His hand in action. And that is actually really tough. It's easy to have faith with that hindsight. Oh, I see what God did over there. Isn't that cool? And we have great testimonies and great amazing statements and great powerful stories about what God has done. But how hard is it to understand what He is doing, especially when you don't see and understand? So how do we have that trust in that crazy present and have trust regarding what will one day be? Any of you guys worry warts? You just worry from time to time, and your mind just kind of spirals. That's what worry is your mind goes, I have a problem, I don't have a solution, and that therefore I have this problem without a solution. I don't know what I'm going to do. I got this problem without a solution, and you're just doing this circle. That's called worry. That brings about an emotion called anxiety that later turns into depression. Okay, so that right there is a big part of a lot of our struggle, is that spiral. And something like this is going to severely help this. It's going to severely help this, and you'll see how here in just a moment. To help us kind of get an idea to restart, because Rachel and I went on our anniversary vacation last weekend, had a great time. We looked at the world's biggest steer, and so that was awesome. And I had no idea sycamore trees grew near the Michigan border. I thought they were just a Western thing. Come to find out, the last one blew down in a storm in 1927, and the stump was preserved in a building. And so we got to look at the last sycamore stump. That was cool. Those pictures are going on Facebook probably sometime tonight, because those were just cool. I really, really like that. I'm just looking at the sycamore stump going, Near Michigan? Really? Like just an hour south? Really? No way. I thought those were just out west. This thing was huge. I mean, pictures can't do it justice because you have to kind of go back to take a picture. Then it looks normal. So it kind of was rough. But nonetheless, to get us a good running start here, nothing better describes Esther than Walmart. Talking about a messed up world, okay? Walmart. Here's what I had. This is a true story. True story. Many years ago, my dad and I went to Walmart. And our goal, when we go shopping, when my dad and I would go shopping, we don't go shopping much anymore, but when we would go shopping, we're like Duck Dynasty men. Okay, we're like, we're gonna conquer the store. That's how we were. We had our goal. We wanted to see how fast can we get in and get out of the store. Can we break any records? So we went in not to shop. That's how ladies do it. When they say they want to go shopping, it's, well, what do you want to get? I don't know. I just want to go shopping. Yeah, I got some things on my list, but I'm going to look at this over here. That's what my wife does. She'll say, let's go shopping. I got a list. Okay, cool. Let's go to the list. Go. We get to the store, and she goes, oh, look at this. I'm like, focus. She goes, I want to shop with you. Yeah, you got a list. Let's do some shopping. And she's like, but I want to look at this over here. Well, that's not, it's about the experience and the presence. That's how women go shopping. Men, it's, where's my list? Go straight to it. Get it. Pop in the cart and get out. That's what we like to do. It's that conquer mentality, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. I'm sure, yeah. See, he's like, oh yeah. He's just not agreeing too well and too openly, expressively, because his wife's sitting next to him. You see, that's kind of what's going on. Because as far as she's concerned, they have fun time shopping, and he's like, yeah, that looks nice. No, it doesn't make you look fat. You make you look fat. No, it's I'm a dead man. Anyway, it's. So my dad and I went shopping, and we have that goal. In fact, when we went shopping, we looked at our list, and we were like, oh no, our list is on two ends of the store because Walmart has nothing conveniently located. Okay, so sometimes if you want something over here, the next thing you want is way stinking over there. So we decided, like men, we're going to... Oh, you knew the whole phrase. Divide and conquer. Yeah. Okay. Now, my wife hates divide and conquer. We goes, I'm like, divide and conquer. She goes, no, then we're not spending time together. Jail is not time together. This is Walmart. Okay. So anyway, so divide and conquer. So my dad goes, and he's like, I'm going, and I go, boom, and I get all the stuff. And I told him, we'll check out separately because it's faster. Then we don't have to wait for one person to get done. So we're both going to check out separately. I'll get what I want. He gets what he wants. I pay for my stuff. He pays for his stuff. And we're out of there. So I go and I pick up all my stuff, and I got in the cart, and I'm going. I get out that check line. I'm like, woohoo! I go out to my car, and I open up the back end, put all the stuff in the trunk. I put the car away. I get into my car, turn it on, and I drive home. And I get home. I see you see the problem here. So I get home, I pull up in the driveway, I pull everything out, I go inside, I'm putting stuff on the shelf, I'm putting stuff on the counter, stuff in the cupboards, I'm getting stuff away. I'm like, yeah, did real good. Phone rings. This is before the era of cell phone, by the way. This is before cell phone, so our landline rings, like, big old chirpy sound. Okay, my mom answers the phone, hello, a little bit of, a little bit of murmuring. I figured, okay, probably your sister or something, some type of bad news. My mom comes out, and she's kind of like, I'm going to Walmart. I'm like, why? You left your father there, and he's so mad. I went, oh, my goodness, I left Dad there. And she goes, yep, and your father had to go to customer service. Had you paged? You didn't show. So then he had to ask them to call. And that was really humiliating for him. So I'm going to go pick up your father and bring him home. I suggest you don't be around when we come back. All right. Now, this is what Esther's like. This is the story of Esther. Israel has forgotten the Lord their God. And God's looking for them. He knows where they are. He knows right where they are. My dad knew right where I was when he called home. He knew what had happened. Okay, and so it's like that with God, that the Israel had left God, forgotten God. They are in exile, and God is on the pursuit, if you will. God is reaching out to Israel with a page called a prophet and saying, come home. Come, remember me as God. Okay, so that's a little bit of what's going on. And so that's where we're at. And now several prophets have told Israel to go back home, and many of Israelites did not go back home. They ignored the call. It's almost as if my dad were to call me on my cell phone. He left me at Meijer, and I say, well, take a cab. You know, that's what Israel did by staying away from the nation, from the country of Israel. Okay, and that describes where Mordecai is at and where Esther is at. They're in Susa, not Jerusalem. They're not rebuilding the temple. They aren't living like Jews. That's where they were at. And then out of these choices, these sinful choices, rejecting God, rejecting the kings that say, go back, rejecting the prophets that say, go back, they stayed in their comfy, cushy jobs and their great little fluffy lifestyle, and they stayed in Susa. Now, there's been a revival in the hearts of the people, especially when the king signed into law the annihilation of every Jew out of the tricksting work of Haman. Okay, so Haman hated the Jews. He's particularly Mordecai. And so Haman wrote up a law. The king signed it for all the Jews to be annihilated, for all of them to be killed. Now suddenly, it's amazing how sometimes chaos and tragedy can cause a revival in the hearts of people. And that's what happened here. And everyone started turning back to God, saying, God, what do we do here? God, we seek your face. God, we have been unfaithful. Will you still be faithful to us, even though we've been unfaithful? That's been the question now throughout the book of Esther. Will God deliver his people? And so Mordecai had at one point had saved the life of the king. And now here we are in the story of Esther about 4 years later. From that moment, okay, about 4 years later, and the king in chapter 6, verse 1, is going to have a sleepless night. He's going to have a night where he just can't quite, you've had those, right? You lay down, you're just not getting comfortable, and you just can't. You try this way, now my neck feels funny. I try this way, now my back feels funny. I try this way, now my face feels funny. My arm's falling asleep before me. Have you ever had those nights and your mind is like, I call it monkey minding, right? Where your mind swings from branch to branch like a monkey, or from thought to thought. Right? It just kind of goes, I have thought this thought, and I thought that thought. I thought about this at job tomorrow. I thought about this from yesterday and this from earlier in the day. And then now if I fall asleep, I'll get 6 hours of sleep. If I fall asleep now, I'll get 5 hours of sleep. If I fall asleep now, I'll get 4 hours of sleep. And I'm going to be really tired tomorrow. I better fall asleep. And you're thinking more about sleep than sleeping because you just can't get to sleep. If you had restless nights like that, okay, this is what the king is going to have, is a very restless night. Okay, and he's going to try to cure his sleeplessness. Nothing cures it better than the History Channel. Okay, and so he's going to have reflect upon the history of what he has done as a king. He's going to want to hear about his great successes and his great campaigns. He's going to want to hear about how awesome of a king he is, so that he can rest easy at night going, I'm awesome. Okay, that's what the king's going to do. We're going to see this. I'm going to read the whole chapter of chapter 6, all 14 verses at once, so we can just see what's happening here. This is very, very interesting. Meanwhile, just a little bit, one more background issue before we kick into this. Haman is wanting to kill Mordecai. He's already wanting to kill all the Jews. He's wanting to heighten this whole thing about Mordecai. What Haman wants to do, because Mordecai won't bow down to him, Mordecai got promoted. Haman got promoted. Mordecai won't bow down to Haman, and it's because, Mordecai says, I saved the king and you get promoted. Well, that's stupid. And so I refuse to salute you like a person in the military. You're a jerk. You only got captain because of who you know, not because of what you did. And so I refuse to salute you. So Haman gets upset, wants to just destroy Mordecai, so he's going to work on crucifying Mordecai. It was a type of crucifying. They called it hanging on a tree. It's a type of impaling, very disgusting practice. And the Romans perfected it to make it the crucifixion that we know of today. The Persians started it, and that's what Haman wants to do to Mordecai, is crucify him. He wants this hanging on a tree to be the symbol of the end of God's people. The irony is that later on in history, Jesus uses it as a symbol of the salvation of God's people. So it's great how God takes history and flips it around. And so Haman's ready to do this. He just needs the king's approval. So while the king is having a sleepless night, Haman's right outside the bedchambers, ready to just ask the king, can I do this? Can I do this? Can we have a special impalement ceremony? I got a 75-foot stick I want to hang him on. Okay, that's what Haman's ready to do. So let's see now what happens on this sleepless night in Esther chapter 6, starting at verse 1. If you have your Bibles, follow along. Otherwise, it is on the screen. That night, this is the night that Haman decides to crucify Mordecai, okay, to hang him on a tree. That night, sleep escaped the king. That's interesting. Of all nights for the king to have a sleepless night, why that night? What a coincidence. So that night, the sleep escaped the king. So he ordered the book of recording daily events be brought and read to the king. Come, tell me how great I am. Let me hear about my daily events. They found the written report of how Mordecai had informed on Bigthana and Teresh, 2 eunuchs who guarded the king's entrance when they planned to assassinate King Ahasuerus. The king inquired, well, what honor and special recognition have been given to Mordecai for this act? Because that was not recorded. And Persians pride themselves on that. They pride themselves on how much wealth they have, so great that they could be able to throw the biggest ceremony for somebody who does anything good. And there's nothing recorded. So he said, okay, what was done for Mordecai? The king's personal attendants replied, nothing. There's nothing written here. Nothing has been done for him. The king asked, well, who is in the court? Now, Haman was just entering the outer court of the palace to ask the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows he had prepared for him. And the king's attendants answered him, well, Haman's out there. Haman's there standing in the court. Well, have him enter, the king ordered. Because the king wants somebody to take charge of this. Who's going to honor Mordecai? Well, Haman just happens to be out there ready to crucify Mordecai. Let's have Haman come in. He can honor Mordecai for me. This is funny stuff. Okay, this is really good humor. So I would love to make a good movie about this. I haven't seen one yet, a cartoon or a movie done well. They've always made it into this love story, fluff stuff. It belongs on the Lifetime channel. It should be really funny stuff here. So Haman entered. The king asked him, what should be done for the man the king wants to honor? I want to honor someone. What should be done for this guy? And Haman thought to himself, who is it the king would want to honor more than me? Okay, this could be done like the Office style a little bit. We have that like a camera that could set up, and now there's an interview. Oh, he's going to interview me. You know, wouldn't that be fun? Steve Carell could play this part. He seems like a Haman. And so who would the king want to honor more than me? Because I am Haman, and I'm awesome. Okay, this is how this is. So Haman told the king, for the man the king wants to honor, Haman starts thinking, know what his idea is? I want to be treated like a king for a day. I want to take everything from the king except his wife. That's what Haman asked for. Check it out. Have them bring a royal garment that the king himself has worn. You think Haman has any type of jealousy and delusions of grandeur? He wants to be king, okay? And a horse the king himself has ridden, which has a royal diadem on its head. Put the garment and the horse under the charge of one of the king's most noble officials. Okay? Have them, he's hoping it might end up being Mordecai because Mordecai's official at the gate. Remember that? Wouldn't that be ironic? Haman's thinking, wouldn't that be funny? Right before I kill him, I get to get praised by him. That'll force him to bow to me. Okay, one of the most noble officials. Have them clothe the man the king wants to honor, parade him and the horse through the city square because he wants to be recognized. He wants an audience. He wants the crowd to cheer, hip, hip, and hooray for Haman. Okay, he wants to be king for a day publicly and proclaim before this man, this is what is done for the man the king wants to honor, because he's not king, so you kind of got to deal with that. The king told Haman, hurry and do just as you have proposed. Take a garment and horse. Meanwhile, I can see it. Haman's getting ready to leave. All right, I'm going to do it. He said, take a garment, got a garment. Take a horse, got a horse. Give it to Mordecai. Huh? Okay, and it would need that little, great little dramatic little Charlie Chaplin. That's why Steve Carell could do it. I think he could stick his leg up like that. Okay, and and again, for Mordecai, the Jew who is sitting at the king's gate, do not leave out anything you have suggested. So in one of the greatest ironic moments in recorded human history, Haman took the garment and the horse. You got to love the detail on this because it takes a while to get through it. It's not, and it happened, and it came to pass. Okay, it tells you the details because for Haman, this stinketh greatly, and nobody may abide to the order thereof. Okay, this is a horrible moment for Haman. Haman's really upset. And so the author lets us just enjoy this moment of justice, okay, of ironic justice. So Haman took the garment and the horse. He clothed Mordecai and paraded him through the city square, crying out before him, "This is what is done." I often wonder if the crying was literally with tears. This is what is done for the man the king wants to honor. Hip, hip, hooray. Okay, verse 12, then Mordecai returned to the king's gate. Underline that if you are a Bible writer. If you're the type of person that writes in your Bible, this is key. Underline that phrase. Mordecai returned to the king's gate. Very important. Very, very. Can I express this more on the importance? If you're not someone who writes in your Bible, hopefully you got one of your fill-in-the-blank sheets. Write on that. Mordecai returned to the king's gate. This is absolutely pivotal. About an hour from now, you'll see why. Okay. Some of you are now thinking, is he serious? It's already been 15 minutes. Right? Underline that. But Haman, overwhelmed, you think? Okay, hurried off for home with his head covered. So shameful, can't even look up. Can't even let people look at him. Just brown bagged it. Okay, just put a bag right over his head. And Haman told his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything that happened. So he went on to Facebook and complained and griped. He went on to the Twitter sphere and he just started tweeting everywhere. He went on to Zing and posted graphics and documents, went on to the Vine, posted a new thread. Everywhere he went, he just let all social network know that the today was awful. Okay, so he griped and he complained as publicly as he could once he got home about everything that had happened. And his advisors and his wife Zeresh said to him, since Mordecai is Jewish, interesting, since he is Jewish and you have begun to fall before him, you won't overcome him because your downfall is certain. His wife, who came up with the idea to crucify Mordecai, now knows the tables have turned. She knows the history of the Jewish people. She is aware of this, and so now she knows that since he could not be crucified, that was the only chance. If you kill him, he can't rise up from God's hand, okay, because he's dead. That's her thinking. Well, that didn't happen, so she says, you know what? It's over now. Your downfall is certain, okay? I just married a fool. Thank you very much for just making my day. Okay, that's basically what's their statement. But while they were still speaking with him, while they're still telling him, you're done, you're Bonthafadder, okay, in the Star Wars universe, you're done, okay. Now that all this is bad, while they were still speaking with him, the eunuchs of the king arrived and rushed Haman to the banquet Esther had prepared. Banquet number 2. Banquet number 2. So, couple of things here. Now that we've seen the story and we got it, I want to reflect upon this as best of my ability here to help us be able to interact with this text. I would like you to notice something very, very pivotal, and that is that the king had a sleepless night. Here's what's interesting about that. Jewish writers often loved a little way of writing called a chiasm. Jewish people loved writing in chiasms, and it appears that the entire book of Esther is one giant chiasm. And what chiasms are is they are a way of writing to where different points of the text become paralleled in the later points of the text, forming an inverted V, where your beginning and your ending parallel, point 2 and the next to the last point are parallel, and it all centers on a key middle moment. Sometimes that middle moment is one verse, sometimes it's a chapter, sometimes it's 2 points that serve as a middle moment. But that middle is what the author wants the audience to really focus in on. Here's what the book of Esther looks like on a very general, simplified chiasm, taking out all the details that would just overwhelm a lot of us, just showing you the general nature of it. You can see we have in chapter 1 the opening and the background, and the parallel at the end would be in chapter 10, the epilogue. The king's first decree in chapters 2 and 3, the king's second decree in chapters 8 and 9. You see how that parallels? Okay, the clash between Haman and Mordecai about bowing, chapter 4 and 5. What we're now getting ready and are beginning to see in chapter 6 and 7 is the clash between Mordecai and Haman, but the other flip side. This is where Haman was in the advantage. Now Mordecai is going to be in the advantage. But you see the parallel that's there. All of that then centering on one verse. The king had a restless sleep. The king could not find sleep. Coincidence? Keep in mind that the author has chosen to leave God out of the text. The Bible does not mention the name of God, or the book of Esther does not mention the name of God, does not talk about visions, does not talk about angels, there's no dreams, there's no presence of God, no hand of God, no mighty breath, no coming of the Spirit, nothing. No manifestations of God, no fire, no wind, nothing. Not even a prayer to God that is directly mentioned. We just have the word fasting, but it's not done in a way to say that they're seeking God like that. It was a purposeful choice by the author to show how distant the people of Israel were from God and how God is still faithful to those who are not. Okay, it's amazing what God does with his people when they screw up. Okay, so God is not mentioned, so what we get are coincidental moments to where the author says, what a coincidence, or as more fun around here to say, what a coinkadink, wink, wink. Yeah, some of you remember. What a coinkadink, wink, wink. So we have to ask ourselves, is this simply a mere coincidence, or is it what a coinkadink, wink, wink? Okay, so Haman's ready to kill Mordecai and crucify him. He shows up at the king's door to get that request, and that night, in the past 4+ years, no recording of a sleepless night, but that night he gets a sleepless night. What a coinkadink. Okay, you got it, right? And this happens a lot in the book of Esther. Here's another one, possibly in the book of Esther, this show a coinkadink, wink, wink. And it's found right here. Here's the part of book of Esther, chapter 5, particularly verses 3 through 5, and emphasizing verse 4 here. Do you see the coincidence? Oh my gosh. Okay, let me help you out. I want you to zero in right here, because this is the key part. Okay, let me help you out. It was really fun because I look at this, and my Hebrew is extremely, extremely rusty. I put this up to make sure that this graphic looked nice, and our associate pastor starts going, oh, that's, I'm like, yeah, that's some... Yeah, it was like the Tasmanian devil. It was quite impressive. But what I want you to notice here is this is the phrase where it starts saying that it is the calling of Esther to the king and Haman to come to the banquet. That's what part of verse 4 of chapter 5 this is. Okay, may the king come to the banquet. Now, within Hebrew, it doesn't matter what order the words are in. I could pick these up and flip-flop them, and the sentence translates the same. Hebrew and Greek don't work like English does. It's how the word is written out, the letters used and the construction used, that determines the translation of the sentence. So it's kind of fun. So therefore, what the authors will do is put the words in a certain order, sometimes just because it's the easiest to write, or sometimes because they want to emphasize a particular word. Okay, so sometimes that word order is intentional beyond just the interpretation of the text. And here's something that one of the, actually Southern Baptist scholars, as far as I know, was one of the first to find this out and point this out. It's very kind of interesting. And we'll have to ask ourselves, is it just coincidence or is it a coinkydink, wink, wink? We'll have to ask ourselves which one this is going to be. And that is this, that when you look at the first letter of each of these words, the first letters... Yeah, Hebrew, by the way, reads right to left, so it goes from right to left. The first letter in each of these words spells the name, if you put it left to right, Yahweh. Coincidence? Or is it a coinkydink, wink, wink? Have no idea. I actually don't have any idea. It might just be a coincidence. Might be reading way too much in it. It is kind of cool. And I do find it kind of neat. But it's possible. Could it be that the author is trying to say, look, when we see that first banquet, why does she wait for the second banquet? I made the statement that I think that God was impressing upon Esther that it was not out of fear, that God told Esther, impressed upon her heart very vividly, have a second banquet. Don't confront Haman here. Let the whole crucifixion thing get planned out so that Jesus can reuse it later on in history, a picture bigger than her own, something she'll never understand why she felt like wanting to have a second banquet, but went with it to have a second banquet. And at the beginning of the first banquet, we get God showing up at the beginning of the request. It's the first thing she says, is the name God in the letters. I find that possibly more than just a coincidence. It might be what a coinkydink, wink, wink. Okay, but that is what is happening within the book of Esther. Always, God is working subtly in the background. There's one other book of the Bible that acts like that too. Also has a woman's name as the title, Ruth. Though God's name is mentioned there only by somebody's confession, not in action or vision or deed. That's another book where God is secretly working behind the scenes, more subtly working it out. And so what we're seeing here is that we have to kind of remember that a lot of times we will not see the hand of God actively working in our presence. Not until after it's all done. And even then, we might not even see the whole picture. That sometimes we might have to begin to just trust in God up front. Trust Him first without having to see His hand acting. And that's going to be hard based upon how much this conflict is taking place, whether we're people of pride or people of humility. People who have pride are going to be very, very impatient by waiting. People with humility allow God to do what He wants to do. But people of pride, they struggle with this. And it becomes hard. And they don't see it. And they think God has abandoned them. And they just run off with their own thing. Well, if God's not going to do it, I'm going to do it. And so there's this battle, this constant conflict between pride and humility that is taking place. In fact, let me just be honest. Every single human being on this planet is proud in some way, shape, or form. Somewhere in their life. All of us struggle with pride in some way. It just looks different from person to person. So what happens is if we don't see our own pride, we see other people's pride because their pride is different than ours and we see it. And so we point it out and we go, ha ha, pride, 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 but we don't see our own. And then they see our pride because our pride is evident. But they see it, we don't see it, and it becomes something we're kind of blind to. Some of us have pride when it comes to wanting money, and that's our driving force. Some of us want power. Some of us want an audience. Some of us want access to authority, or we want access to leadership. But here's the thing, and I want you to kind of realize, pride and humility, neither one of them are a destination. They're a direction. And I think this really helps us be able to understand how this battle works when we start realizing that it is a direction, not a destination. After all, since we all have some type of pride we have to repent from, how do we know if we've arrived at humility if it were a destination? I mean, how would we know if we've gotten there? What would we do? Would we sit down and kind of take inventory of our life? Start looking over all the things that we've done and looking all that's happening, and then we go, woohoo! I've arrived at humility. I'm a humble person. Woohoo! And then we go, wait a minute. Don't! you know, I guess I didn't have humility. I just had pride in recognizing my humility. Could somebody actually go up to someone and say, I'm more humble than you are? It's just, how would you know? And so there was one author by the name of C.J. Mahaney. He wrote a book titled Humility. And in that book, he offered this statement. He said, no one can ever say they are humble. All they can say is that they're a proud person pursuing humility by the grace of God. And what that's basically saying is that all Christians can really say is, it's not about arriving at humility as some sort of destination. All they can really say is, by the grace of God, I just want to move in the direction of humility. I want to move in that direction. I want to go that way. Okay? Because pride wants to trust in our own glory. Pride wants to trust in what we can provide. Pride wants to trust in what we can achieve. And that becomes that meaning, the significance, the purpose, the goal, the aim, the ambition. That's what pride wants. Humility wants to be able to magnify God's glory. And by magnify, I don't mean that we're trying to make something small bigger. It's that we're trying to take something that's far away and show how amazing it is. Kind of like what telescopes do to a planet. It doesn't make the planet bigger. It makes something that appears to be far away, seemingly small and insignificant, and revealing how awesome it really is and how amazing it is. So when we hear songs or see in Scripture about magnifying God, it means to reveal how awesome he really is. Let it be known and seen. Humility tries to do that. Humility trusts in what God will provide. Humility tries to, rather than saying, look what I did, tends to say, look what God is doing. Okay, so humility takes a whole different route to things. And so what I'd like to do is I would like to really try to, and in reality, this is what we're going to be dealing with this tip number 11 here. This is what this is about. That if we're going to really try to go in the direction of humility, then we're going to have to trust that God is present and that he is providing even when we can't see it. Even when we can't see it and we have no idea what on earth he's doing. And we have no idea what he's about. And we are completely confused and baffled. And we end up saying, God, I thought you were going this way, but then you went that way. What the heck? What's going on? Okay, humility, pride says, God, you've screwed up. Why aren't you doing something? Intervene. I've done everything right. Humility says, God, I'm not expecting this. I thought you were going this way, but you went that way. Help me to see what you're doing. Help me to understand. That's what humility tries to do. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask some questions. And these questions, there's going to be several of them, are for you to kind of reflect on and for myself to reflect on. To ask myself if I'm struggling, where, or more specifically where I'm struggling, not what, if I'm, but where I'm struggling with pride and where you're struggling with pride. And these aren't all encompassing. These are the entire set of questions. You can go on forever. It's just a few that under my assessment of myself and our congregation and some of our online community, these are some of the questions that I had picked out, that I've run across from either books or other people, and from just thinking this through, trying to figure out which ones best will hit where we're struggling as a group. So hopefully these will be convicting to some of you, and if they are, don't get mad at me, because they're probably convicting to me as well. And I got a question on here to deal with that, and you can just leave me alone. And so here's how this will play out. First question, do you crave attention, recognition, honor, or reward? Do you crave attention, recognition, honor, or reward? And maybe a better way of asking this would be to flip it around. Do you get angry when you don't receive attention, recognition, honor, or reward? Do you get angry when you don't receive it? Have you ever been angry about not getting a raise or a bonus? Have you ever been angry about not getting a promotion that you thought was coming? Have you ever been angry for just not getting simply a thank you from someone that you did something for, and it just eats you up inside? Why couldn't they at least have said thank you? Some sort of appreciation. Okay, then we know that pride, and you know that pride is beginning to creep in. Are these things good? Is it good to receive recognition? Yeah. Is it good to receive a reward? Absolutely. We try to reward people in our congregation from time to time. Not that long ago, we gave a nice little compass thingamabobber to Nancy, who is leading out our celiac ministry and all the work that she's done for our food fair. It's good to recognize people. It's good to reward people. These are all good things and appropriate things. But if you get angry for not receiving them, then there's a problem. Then pride is coming in at that point. It's creeping into your life. Do you crave an audience? Do you crave an audience? In other words, when you are either excited or mad or whatever, is Facebook the first place you turn? Is a tweet the first thing you do? In fact, if I went onto your Facebook page, would I find you talking to people, congratulating them, or about people, griping and complaining about them? I thought it'd be kind of fun to connect my computer to the internet to where we're at and just go on Facebook, start pulling up people's pages and looking at some of the posts and making an assessment. And so I did that. I'm just kidding. Those who got afraid, you probably have something to hide. Sneaky, huh? Okay, and I see a lot of people, they air out all their dirty laundry on Facebook. They gripe and they complain and they insult and they belittle and they're always picking a fight. And what they're doing is they're craving an audience. They're wanting an army to back them up, and they're wanting to convince people to join their way, their ideas, their army. And it's all about an audience. I know people that are mad at their spouse, and rather than talking to their spouse, they go online to talk about their spouse. And it should not ever be that way with the church. Sure, it can be that way with the lost world. They don't have Jesus. They don't understand proper morality and ethics. That happens in the church. That's despicable. It's worse than when the lost world does it. It's worse when the church does it. Okay? It is significantly worse. It should not happen. Any post we give, if it's a complaint or a problem, it should be a personal message to someone, or a phone call, or a visit to their house, not a public open forum. It should be one-on-one. That's what it should be. And so don't gripe and complain. When people say stupid things, I see sometimes, even our church, they'll say stupid things online. I'll just click their page, go to personal messages, and I'll write them out. I'm not going to post as a comment because I don't want our dirty laundry aired out. I want to actually provide grace for the person and not let the rest of the world know how much of an idiot they are. It's probably already evident in their stupid posts, and if people didn't get it, well then whatever. I'm going to still talk with them one-on-one. I'm not going to make it for the whole world to see because I want to protect their image to the best of my ability. Okay, and so that's about pride and humility. Humility says, I'll try to work with someone privately. Pride says, I want an army and bash this person to show that I'm right. Okay, there's a big difference in approach there. Third question. We got a whole bunch of these. Already feeling the pinch, I can tell. Number 3, do you become jealous when someone else succeeds? Do you become jealous when someone else succeeds? And while you might be really quick to say, no, I have no problem there, just give me a moment. Just give me a moment. Let me give you some examples, and maybe you might find out that, oh, snap, that's what that means? Oh, great. Have you ever made little jokes or ever heard someone makes a joke like, I can't believe those two got married, or they're pregnant, pray for that kid. Okay, those statements aren't rejoicing with someone who succeeds. They got promoted. Well, goes to show it's who you know, not what you do that matters. See, you're not doing what the Bible says, which is to rejoice with those who rejoice. Here's a fun one. A woman shows up and she says, man, every time I eat chocolate, I lose weight. How are you going to respond to her? Said by a man. Wife silent. But it's would you rejoice with those who rejoice, or would you say, politely, well, just wait till you're my age, where every time you even smell chocolate, you swell up like a puffer fish. You are my age? Well, then shut up. right? Okay, so sometimes we're a little stuck here. Some of us are. We really can be stuck here a little bit. It is hard sometimes to be able to rejoice with those who rejoice, especially when they achieve what we desire, or their success is in an area of our current struggle or failure. It is really, really hard to rejoice. It's hard to rejoice when you have a spouse who's an absolute jerk, and then a sibling marries an amazing person. It is really hard to be able to rejoice when someone's able to buy a house when you're homeless and can't even figure out how to make your bills meet up. It is really hard to rejoice in someone getting a promotion when you're unemployed. It is really hard to celebrate a pregnancy when you're infertile or not even married and long for a family. It's really, really hard. And yet we need to learn to be humble enough to recognize that just because I don't have those things does not make me less of a person in the kingdom of God, does not make me less of a person in the eyes of God, that I can still celebrate that they have those things, that they were able to be gifted with those things, and be okay that I don't have it, because we don't have to be experts in everything, and we don't have to be competent in everything, and we don't have to have everything. And it's good to have goals and to have dreams. And if other people achieve those dreams instead of us, and to be able to say, well, that's awesome, let me celebrate with you, and maybe vicariously enjoy it through your eyes, because I don't get it right now, and that's okay. Let me spoil your kids for you, since I don't have kids of my own. Let me go ahead and just celebrate their birthday from time to time with you, if that's all right. And just, it's just great to celebrate with people. You don't have to be jealous and let that turn to anger and bitterness and depression and despair. But it's that pride, humility thing. Which direction are we going to go toward? Which direction are we going to feed? A few more questions for you. Do you fear success, or do you fear failing? It's kind of like a 2-for-1. Okay, do you fear success, or do you fear failure? And this is kind of a double dark side here. It really is. It's kind of like, the old Sith and then the new order, new Sith coming out in episode 7. That's kind of what we got. We got two dark sides kind of happening here a little bit. Okay, and what's kind of happens is this. When someone fears success, what they say is that I'm afraid to do well, because if I do well, the expectations might be more than I'm willing to handle. And then there's the fear of failure, which is if I try, I will be afraid of failing, looking like the fool, being shown to be inadequate. And so what both people do in these categories, it looks like this: loss of ambition. When you see somebody who doesn't have ambition, they're either afraid of succeeding or they're afraid of failing. Either way, what's their root problem? Pride. Person who doesn't have ambition has a pride problem. But you never thought that, but you would have said they have a laziness problem. They have a pride problem. They have a pride problem. And it's looking like the lack of ambition. I don't know if I want to work those type of hours. I'm not going to work hard because they might expect more than I want to contribute. Or I might just completely screw the whole thing up and just show how stupid I am. So I'm just not going to do anything. See, right there, it's all about me. It's not about the job at all. It's not about how is this company going to succeed because I'm the employee. It's not about how can I make the employee or the other employees work better. It's not about how can I help the company and my boss have a higher profit margin. It's all about how I look and what's expected of me. See the pride there? Probably never thought of it like that. But that's what's going on deep down inside of all of that. Fifth one. I can tell you're just excited about going forward now. Fifth one. Do you have a lot of conflicts? Do you fight with your spouse, fight with your boss, fight with your coworkers? Are you fighting on Facebook? And even maybe right now, fighting with me in your mind, saying, who do you think you are? You have this problem too. Okay, it's pride. And let me just be honest here. Let me just be completely honest. You ready for this? I'm just going to be brutally honest. Gloves off. You will not see a war start by two humble people. You will not see a conflict started by two humble people. Will you ever see two people fighting over who gives the homeless man food? Will you ever see two people fighting over who gives to provide clothing to a single woman's children? You get two proud people together, you got fuel for a fight. Every conflict, I don't care what it is, involves pride. Because two humble people won't fight. They'll come to a solution without that. They will have disagreement, but it won't be a fight. You see, so how much conflict do you have? I know a lot of people that say, man, I yell at my kids, I yell at my spouse, I yell at my boss, I yell at the coworkers, I yell at our customers. All I do is yell. I wish people would just get smarter so I could stop yelling. Ever felt that? Thought that? Okay. That automatically says that you're smarter than everybody else. That automatically says that you're the one who's always right and everyone else is always wrong, and pride. Oh, so much pride. So how much conflict do you have in your life? If I were to go onto your Facebook posts, would I see compliments or conflict? Would I see statements of argumentation or statements of edification, building people up? What would we see? Should I go to Facebook and... I know, can't do the fear tactic twice, but let's be honest with it. Look over your past history and ask yourself how many statements here were meant to try to build someone up, or how many statements were actually putting someone down, trying to argue your way through something, was actually part of a fight or a conflict. Let that be revealing of the pride that's in your life. Question number 6. Do you tend toward an attitude of entitlement or thankfulness? An attitude of entitlement or thankfulness? Which one do you tend to gravitate toward? Entitlement says you deserve something, it's your right. Thankfulness says, I don't deserve it, but received it, and I'm grateful. Which one is it going to be? Let me give some real fun examples here. Have you ever gotten mad at a slow drive-through? Ever gotten mad at being backed up in traffic and construction? Ever had the wish that they could just build you your own highway? That would just go from where you are to where you want to go and just go over everything. Okay? That's a very specific example because I have dreams like that every now and then. That would just be awesome. I just have my own highway. Okay? Those are senses of entitlement. This drive-thru should be faster. They're taking so slow. This isn't fast food. This is slow food. Fast food is about how fast it goes through your digestive tract, by the way, not about the speed of service. So don't be fast and fancy-free with the term fast. Okay, but we get this sense of entitlement that we deserve to have. We should only have. Ever blame a state? I can't wait to leave Michigan. I've heard people say this when they come to the bus station. They want a ticket. Where do you want to go? Anywhere but here. I'm like, what? Michigan's a horrible place. Michigan's a wonderful place. There's nothing wrong with Michigan. The people in it might be conflicting or problem from time to time, but the place is fine. Michigan only has 2 seasons. Winter and construction. Oh, like that's Michigan's fault. It's not Michigan's fault. It's whose fault? People, okay? So we just kind of have to keep some of that in mind. But we tend to want to blame things because we're entitled. Let's take this one step a little bit deeper. Have you ever heard the phrase or said the phrase, I need to be heard. I need to be respect me. You respect me. Now, being heard and being respected are good things, but they are desires, not need. Whenever we take a desire and we elevate it to the level of need, we're committing idolatry. And we're having pride coming in. It's good to be heard. It's good to be respected. Nowhere in the Bible does it say you must be respected. It says you must respect. And just because someone sins against us does not mean that they are violating our rights as a human being. It means they're treating us disrespectfully. How do we reply back to that? With pride or humility? With a sense of entitlement or try to find a way to build them up with a sense of thankfulness? How do we handle some of this? Do we say, doggone drive-through, taking forever, I can't believe what's so long in there, why can't they hire more employees, why can't they raise their profit margins, why on earth can't they just doggone lower the prices, $1 for a hamburger, for crying out loud? You know, or are we going to say, I'm so thankful that I can at least get food? Because I know places that can't. You know, what attitude are we going to have? Someone cuts you off. Are you going to sit there and say, why did you almost cut me off? I'm going to wave my hand and only one finger, and I'm going to tweet about you, and I'm going to blog about you, and how horrible Michigan drivers are. Rawr! Or is it going to be, wow, they almost hit me. Praise you, Lord, that they didn't. Which one's going to wreck your day? Which statement is going to bless your day? Pride or humility? It changes everything. It changes absolutely everything. Now, with all these questions in mind, I want to show you Mordecai's humility. I know it seems weird. I just got to talk about how he was a very prideful man and wouldn't salute Haman like he should. And that's true. That's true. Mordecai has pride. He also has humility. He's a mixed bag, kind of like a lot of us. You know, a lot of us, we're a mixed bag. We're humble one moment, pride the next moment. It's like we're morally bipolar, okay? We fly from one end to the other, and we just have a hard time sometimes. We're a mixed bag, right? You guys willing to admit, I'm a mixed bag? Are you willing to say, I'm a mixed bag? I know you're like, I'm a human being. I'm a mixed human, okay? But I'm mixed up. Okay, I'm messed up. I live in a messed up world, and it's messed up because I myself am messed up. Okay, so I have moments of humility, moments of pride. And when I get moments of humility, I recognize it as such, and I get happy about it. Whew, that was a humble thing for me to do. Dread it. Okay, I'm serious. You know, I help someone, and I leave going, whew, I helped someone. Okay, yeah, you know, it's I'm a mixed bag, right? God goes, yes, you're being my hands, and Satan, there he goes. You know, it's just how it is. We're a mixed bag. Mordecai's a mixed bag. He was not properly humbled toward Haman. Absolutely true. It was not an act of worship. It was not a violation of religion. Mordecai should have bowed to Haman. A lot like Joseph's brothers bowed to him when he was in power and authority. A lot like Abigail bowed to David when he was king, and David bowed to Saul when he was king. It is that type of an issue, and it's totally appropriate. Okay, but Mordecai had pride. Absolutely had pride. And he had humility. Check this out. You ready for a big surprise? Haman did what after the parade? I told you to underline it or write it down. He went to where after the parade? He went back to work. Mordecai, sorry. Yes, I said the wrong name. Dyslexia. Ugh. Mordecai, when he got done with the parade, where did Mordecai go? I told you to underline it. Back to work. Okay, now we got that straightened. Ruined that moment. Okay, Mordecai went back to work. His boss signed into law what? His own death. Mordecai's death. And Mordecai went where? Did he gripe and complain and grumble and gloat and all that stuff? Or did he faithfully work? Did he protest and unionize and cause a lot of problems and stink and create a whole bunch of people and go outside with picket sticks and fences and going, hey, let's go ahead and remove this law, I'm not working to remove this law. Is he doing that? Or is he keeping his mouth shut and being a good, faithful, godly worker? Humility. To work for a man. You want to talk about an unfair boss? Does your boss sign into law your death? They might sign into law different things that make you uncomfortable or inconvenient or might affect some of your health care benefits and might affect some of your pay, but they aren't signing into law that you be hung with a pole going up your rear and out your mouth and impaling you 75 feet high. That's what Mordecai had against him by his own boss, and he showed up to work. How amazing is that? What work ethic is that? How humble is that? That Mordecai shows up to work. Mordecai was passed over for a promotion from how many years ago? Do you remember from the beginning of the sermon? 4 years. He was passed over the promotion. He saved the king's life. Never got a thank you. Never got recognition. Instead, his most hated coworker gets promoted the very next day, it seems like. And 4 years later, the king has yet to right the wrong, and Mordecai goes where? Back to work. How can we begin to express humility? By living our life for God, recognizing that somehow, in some way, God is still present. That God will provide. Somehow, God will set the record straight. At some point, somewhere, somehow, God will provide, even though 4 years might pass and I still don't see it. Even though I am totally unaware of what God is doing. Do you think Mordecai might have said, God, what on earth are you doing? I would have. Any of us would be. In that type of a situation, would have been like, God, what are you doing? What's going on? What's your plan? What's your will? What are you going to be doing with this? And God is silent again and again, day after day, month after year. God is silent. How are you going to work through that? What Mordecai does. I mean, it's amazing. I had a lot of people to come up to me and they say, my boss treats me unfair. Co-workers are not nice to me. I'm overworked. I'm underpaid. Here's what the life of Mordecai says. Don't complain. Work hard. Work well with faithfulness. Send out some resumes. Send out some resumes. Doesn't mean you have to stay at the job. If it's really that bad, you don't have to pick it and all that. Send out some resumes. And then trust that God is present, that God will provide in His timing, even when you can't see it. That's our survival tip number 11. Trust in the presence and providence of God before you perceive it. And if you're going to have that trust, it's going to have to take a humble heart, because a pride heart will be totally blind, totally blind. It's going to take some humility on our part. Let's have a word of prayer.